the complaint is that they have not met with management from the companies, whether it's subcontractors or the owners, the developers. Are you facilitating maybe that charge so that the families, all they want is closure, and to have the people who've hired their family members to speak to them and comfort them through this difficult time? But they say they haven't had that, and it's Friday today. So what's happening with that regard?
All right, I noticed a hand in the back. If you could pose your question, just please put your microphone on. Thank you. Or just come closer. Thank you.
Thanks. It's Corinda from Newsroom Africa. A similar question to my colleague is with the families. They are a bit frustrated not knowing which category their loved ones fall in, whether having been survived or deceased or still trapped. So at what point will you have that communication with them to assist, and when would we see the process to identify bodies in a timeline? Thanks.
All right, and Natalie.
Natalie from EWN. My question's to Mr. Diner. Can you just talk us through your strat on where you're searching now? Are there particular pockets that you're focused on? And after chatting with the developer, what stories were those? What flaws generally?
Right, we'll start with the first question, and I think that was directed towards you, Lieutenant General.
Thank you, the Premier. Now, we haven't met with the construction companies. And we're at the initial stage on our part to do investigation. When the time comes to speak to them, we will find them. Thank you.
Just on the question regarding some of the frustrations that family members are feeling, perhaps Premier or Minister, would you want to feel that?
Okay, I'll talk to that. So there's been a couple of issues, and I'll deal with that one, families, as well as also the families are raising issues about not knowing who's who. There is quite a difficult identification process that's been running at the moment. I'm not sure if it's not here. I mean, SAPs are busy doing fingerprinting. You've got DNA testing, etc., and looking at photographs, trying to match and place. What we've also done is specifically when people have a language barrier, because there's also some language barriers. In the meeting that we had at 10 o'clock, we said that we do have people coming in from consulates. They should be here already by now. But if there's any language practitioner missing, we've also got resources from the Premier's office who are busy linking up and looking for interpreters if that's necessary. So I presume that is all in place now. But the big issue is about getting the identification right. And of course that is a process. It's not an easy process. I'm not sure if on that, maybe for a little heads up, maybe if Dr. Smith wants to talk about any of that, I'm not sure whether you can from a medical point of view, and that's from our side. And then maybe Colin first. Well, Dr. Smith thinks so.
So if you look at, I know it's not visible online, but if I can just mention that away from the roads at the bottom, you can see where the 3 TLBs are working. So that on the left bottom is what we have broken it up into 6 sectors, although the sectors have got bigger as the operation has continued because of the fact that we've recovered a lot of live people. So that's what we call Charlie sector, the bottom left, and then the bottom right, just a little bit further up where you can see the 2 TLBs working separately. So that was what we identified last night and what we planned for before the heavy machinery came in. And when we did do the interview, when we received the interview results from SAPS around what was told to us by the developer, those were the exact places. So in Charlie sector, it was where the 2 most recent victims were recovered from, and was totally to the left-hand side of that. And you can see the rescue teams are working together with the TLB. So for example, when the last person was rescued just as we came here, or retrieved just before we came here, they actually were able to identify the person as the machine was coming in. So that's the kind of precision that we're trying to work with, even with these big machines.
Right. Any further questions from those joining us online or from Premier?
Smith, I'm not sure if you do want to or not.
Yeah, thank you, Premier. I think from the patients in hospital, we've been able to identify, obviously, those that can speak to us, and those patients have been identified. The families have been counselled, ongoing processes between the two hospitals, George Provincial and George Mediclinic. The patients are being cared for there. There is some movement now of patients going to Cape Town, so the Area Medical Services are on their way to move patients for specialist care now into Cape Town. I think from when it comes to the body identification, the importance of DNA and stuff is going to become increasingly important, and hopefully, we can accelerate those processes to bring that closure. I think that everybody was talking to about a little bit earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. I note there's no further questions in the chat box, so we'll now cross over, so to speak, to the room where we're in. Any further questions from the media colleagues here? Kevin, I see you've got a follow-up.
Thank you, Regan. Kevin, again, I just want to know from Dr. Smith, we got an update on the Mediclinic patient count and how many patients they saw there. If you can just speak to us about George Provincial Hospital in terms of how many patients they were admitted there, and take us through a bit of the injuries and their condition. Thank you.
Happily, I can do that. I think in the early phase of the incident, we activated our hospital plan. So every hospital, private and provincial, worked to the same major incident plan, so that was activated. And eventually the vast majority of patients started going through towards the George Provincial Hospital, where a lot of them were stabilized. And then patients were moved across to Mediclinic for some of the definitive specialist interventions that was required. So at the moment, there are 3 patients that are still in the George facility, and it's a very fluid system. So patients are moving as and when specialist services are required. And as I said, the aircraft should have landed in George already to take the patient through to Cape Town. So I think the importance of it's not about if it's private sector or public sector. The hospitals as a whole responded, and ongoing communication. I've got a list that gets constantly updated with the patients, their conditions as the conditions are changing. I mean, from the injuries, as one can expect, with there's lots of long bone injuries, there's lots of head injuries, when people have been trapped in for a prolonged period of time, one sees crush injuries, which are, has a systematic damage to organ systems and stuff like that. So there's a couple of complicated cases, but I have full confidence in the medical teams that are treating those patients at the moment. Thank you.
Vellani, your follow-up.
I think this one for the disaster, or maybe MEC Bredel. Your departments have had busy first 5 months. There was that blackout in the Karoo, the storm. Can you just take us through how has it been? Have your staff been able to rest in the past 5 months?
Thank you for the question. I think the Premier don't want to receive a call from me anymore, and I don't want to receive any calls from Mr. Colin Diner anymore. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. We've started to build our disaster center actually in 2009, thinking long-term, thinking ahead on future planning kind of philosophies, looking at climate change, understanding it's a system that unfolds very slowly and people adapt very quickly and forget them very quickly. But we knew that it's going to hit us sometime, somewhere, and so over 15 years actually we built this system. It's not a perfect system. We will just keep on building and learning, and it's wonderful to have our national colleagues here because we're all in this together. Picking up the phones, phoning someone. We've also assisted people amongst us all in KZN in the floods. And it's a privilege to save lives, a privilege to work with these people, and even internationally, to send our teams there so that they can get the necessary experience. And as we sit on the site and observe and looking how the people operate, we also pick up in the future what kind of equipment we must invest in and how we can change our own system. The command bus, the command structure that we've got on the site, it's very new, it's the first, and we will discuss going forward, must we not have a bus like that in every district? Because the quicker you get on site, the closer you get to a system, the better for us to do command and control. Thank you.
I have to add to that because it looked like you were budget pitching. But I mean, we joke about you don't want to receive a call, but I think that's a very important question. And I must say that, and it's not about the provincial disaster team or the local disaster. You can see how interjoined it is. And it has taken years to build it up. And I must say that it is amazing to watch how it operates, gets better, and I think, as you said, from floods to fallen pylons to falling buildings to fires, that is one thing that has been invested in over time. And I mean, you just look around the room and you see the expertise and the professionals that gather when they're needed, and it's just amazing. So I've got to say to all of the disaster teams at local level, at district level, at provincial level, at national level, how you guys pull together is really unbelievable. And the responsiveness and the ability to do what you do is really amazing. And how, I think in that slide, you saw the professionals and the volunteers as South Africans and how they come together when we have a disaster. It really stands out.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Premier. Natalie, you've got a follow-up.
I think this question might be for Mr. Diner again. Just in terms of the airspace being cleared above the site, what headache did private drones cause your operations?
Thanks. So I think it was more just to prevent anything from happening, because with the drones that we were using, we needed to do specific things. We wanted to look down or through a specific void that we could only see from a vertical advantage. And we did have some drones coming in earlier around. Obviously, we also want to protect the patients and protect their identities. So that was the one reason. And the other reason, obviously, then was so that we wouldn't have any accidents, any situations. It's a problem we're continuously getting, especially in our fire season when we're having wildfires and our helicopters are in the air. And we have we've had a couple of near misses in the past with drones coming in the plane, where our helicopters have been flying. So we just did it as a precaution.
There was a question at the back there, and Jackie, but I noticed your hand went up first. Please, go ahead.
I don't know if it's on. My name is Ibrahim Nyabe. I am from the Herald. It is directed to the rescue team. I just would like for you to confirm when the rescue mission will be labeled the recovery mission. And, okay, yeah, that's it for now.
If you could just, okay, thanks. And Jackie, just your question, please.
I just want to ask, maybe my question is for General particularly, if the turn ask about that.
Right, so the whole process of rescue phase and recovery phase is really a guideline. It's for us to sort of have a point whereby, there's been many studies done around earthquake responses, around other building collapses, as to when do you go from a stage where you can start scaling down. And because normally when you do your rescue phase, you've got a lot of resources and you push all your resources at quite a high rate to try and achieve as much live recoveries as you possibly can. And then you generally scale down when it gets to the recovery phase. And if you think about, for example, an earthquake response, you would have, where you have one of these buildings, you could end up having, like 100 of these buildings in the types of earthquakes that do happen. And that means that you sort of scale down. The reason we haven't been so specific on this one is because we haven't scaled down. So it hasn't been necessary for us to change kind of our focus. We did change our focus when we took our last patient out from using rescue tools to going more to the kind of demolition type tools. But we haven't cut down on the amount of resources, and for that reason we haven't really drawn a line to say we are going into a recovery phase. We still have a few voids to search through, and we're going to continue in the kind of rescue phase until we search those voids. We know that the time is against us, but we're going to continue doing that.
General?
Now, we do not really have problems with DNA delays. That was sorted a long time ago, last year. As we speak now, the forensic lab, they are on standby for any eventuality that we get mass discovery. If the bodies are decomposed, that we can take DNAs to be done. With the ones that have already been retrieved, because they were still intact, we used fingerprinting, which is the quickest that we did with them. That's what we went. So there is no delay in the delay that could happen. It's when the matching has to be done with other people, families that you can't find and all that. So that's only delay that could be a delay, reasonable delay.
Right, thank you. That concludes the media briefing. A very big thank you to members of the media and general public who joined us this afternoon. My colleagues at George Municipality's media team are very capable colleagues, it has to be said, will continue to issue those status updates at regular intervals just to keep everybody in the loop and informed as to how the operation is going. Thank you very much for joining us.